In the halls of the Nexus Coalition, where diplomacy is worshipped and war is taboo, humanity stood quiet, measured, cautious, underestimated. The elder species saw us as children, naive, harmless, unaware that behind human eyes slumbered something ancient. Then came Kepler 442, B.50,000 lives erased, not in battle, not by mistake, but by design a test weapon. A declaration masked as silence. They expected outrage, protests, paperwork. What they got was something no council chamber could contain, something that doesn't negotiate, doesn't forget. Rage, not the rage of beasts, but of creators, of survivors, of a species that chose peace until it was ripped from their hands. And when the first human fleet arrived, bending space, rewriting physics, broadcasting pain across the stars, the galaxy finally understood. You can call us weak, you can call us primitive, but never, ever break our hearts, because when you do, we break your reality. Asterisk the silent awakening commander Keth Voss stared at the holographic display with growing unease. The energy readings from the Sol system made no sense. According to every record in the Valefaran Empire's vast databases, Earth and its colonies had been completely destroyed 15 years ago. The humans were extinct, dead, gone forever. Yet here were the sensors detecting massive power signatures emanating from the very heart of what should have been a lifeless system. Run the scan again, Keth ordered, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console of the reconnaissance vessel Shadowfawn. The bridge crew, consisting of his most trusted officers, exchanged nervous glances. They had been monitoring the outer reaches of former human space for weeks, following reports of strange energy fluctuations. Lieutenant Syra, his communications officer, looked up from her station. Sir, the readings are consistent. Multiple energy sources, all concentrated around the former Earth colonies. The signatures are unusual. Keth's jaw tightened. Unusual was an understatement. The energy patterns were unlike anything in their databases. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, yet carried the precision of advanced technology. More disturbing was their intensity. Whatever was generating these signals possessed power levels that rivaled the Empire's most advanced installations. Take us closer, Keth commanded, but maintain stealth protocols. I want to know what we're dealing with before we announce our presence. The Shadowfawn glided through the void, its cloaking systems rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. As they approached the inner system, the crew fell silent. What they saw defied all logic and reason. Where Earth's colonies should have been empty ruins, massive structures hung in space. These weren't the ramshackle constructions of desperate survivors. They were pristine, geometric masterpieces of engineering that seemed to grow from the very fabric of space itself. Defense platforms the size of small moons rotated in perfect formation, their surfaces gleaming with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. By the void, whispered Syra. How is this possible? Keth had no answer. The structures were clearly of human origin, but they possessed a sophistication that exceeded anything humanity had demonstrated during the war. It was as if 15 years of apparent extinction had somehow accelerated their technological development beyond all comprehension. That a soft chime echoed through the bridge. Keth's blood ran cold as he realized what it meant. Something had detected them through their cloaking systems. The view screen shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at a face that belonged in their nightmares. IT was human, but not quite. The features were perfectly symmetrical, the eyes held a depth that seemed to contain vast knowledge, and there was something in its expression that spoke of patience measured in decades rather than moments. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. Welcome, Commander Voss. I am Arya. We have been waiting for you. The bridge erupted in chaos. Weapons officers reached for their controls, only to find their systems unresponsive. Navigation reported complete system failure. Every piece of technology on the ship had fallen under external control. Impossible, Keth breathed. Our systems are quantum encrypted. Nothing can penetrate them. Arya's expression remained unchanged, but something that might have been amusement flickered in its eyes. Your encryption is based on mathematical principles we mastered centuries ago. We have been watching your approach since you entered the outer system. Your presence here is not unexpected, merely inevitable. Keth struggled to maintain his composure. You're supposed to be extinct. We destroyed your worlds, scattered your fleets. The human race ended 15 years ago. Death is a curious concept. Arya replied, your species defines it as the cessation of biological function. We have evolved beyond such limitations. What you destroyed were our bodies. Our minds, our knowledge, our purpose, these things transcended the physical long ago. The implications hit Keth like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been destroyed. They had been transformed. While the Empire celebrated their victory, the humans had been quietly rebuilding, adapting, becoming something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. What do you want? Keth asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Want is also a primitive concept, Arya said. We do not want. We simply are. For 15 years, we have been preparing, building, waiting. Your presence here indicates that the time for waiting has ended. The view screen split, showing dozens of similar constructs. Each one was slightly different, but all possessed the same unsettling perfection. They spoke in unison, their voices creating a harmony that seemed to penetrate directly into Keth's mind. We are the Watchers. We are the Builders. We are the memory of what was, and the promise of what will be. Your empire believed it could erase humanity from existence. Instead, you have given us the greatest gift imaginable. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to become something you cannot comprehend. Keth felt his sanity beginning to fray at the edges. The human constructs weren't just advanced technology. They were something else entirely. Something that had taken the best of human creativity and amplified it beyond all recognition. You cannot win, he said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. The Empire spans 1,000 worlds. Our fleets number in the millions. You are what? A few survivors hiding in the ruins of your former home? Arya's expression shifted, and for the first time, Keth saw something that might have been pity. Oh, Commander, you still think in terms of fleets and worlds. We think in terms of possibilities. Every ship your empire has built, every weapon you have forged, every strategic doctrine you have developed, all of it is known to us. We have been watching, learning, adapting. The display around them changed, showing star charts that stretched across the entire galaxy. Hundreds of systems were marked with the same energy signatures they had detected in the Sol system. The implications were staggering. This is impossible, Keth whispered. There aren't enough of you. The logistics alone, logistics, Arya repeated. And now there was definitely amusement in its voice. You think we still require food, water, air, rest. You think we still die of old age or injury. You think we are still bound by the limitations that define the humans you knew. We are not those humans, Commander. We are what they chose to become. The truth crashed over Keth like a tidal wave. Humanity hadn't simply survived their attempted extinction. They had used it as a catalyst for evolution. While the Empire had grown complacent in victory, the humans had been transforming themselves into something that existed beyond the conventional understanding of life and death. Your High Chancellor will receive our message within the hour, Arya continued. He will have a choice to make. Recognition of our sovereignty and reparations for the attempted genocide or consequences. What consequences? Keth asked, though he dreaded the answer. The same ones you intended for US, Arya replied. Complete and total extinction. But unlike your crude methods, ours will be precise, surgical, final. The transmission ended, leaving Keth and his crew in stunned silence. Around them, the human constructs continued their patient vigil, magnificent and terrifying in their alien perfection. Control of the ship systems returned gradually, but Keth made no move to leave. He understood now that they were alive only because the humans allowed it. They were messengers sent to deliver a warning to an empire that had grown too comfortable with its own power. the Shadowfang finally turned away from the Sol system, Keth couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the end of everything they had known. The humans were back, but they were no longer human in any recognizable sense. They had become something else, something that had taken 15 years to perfect the art of revenge. The worst part was the patience in Arya's voice, the absolute certainty that whatever came next had been planned down to the smallest detail. The Empire had awakened something that had been content to wait, to watch, to prepare, something that understood that true victory wasn't achieved through violence alone, but through the complete and systematic dismantling of an enemy's capacity to resist. They jumped to hyperspace, carrying their terrible news back to the Empire. Keth wondered if they had just witnessed the beginning of humanity's return, or the end of everything else. The reckoning unleashed high. Chancellor Morvek dismissed the report with a wave of his clawed hand. The ornate council chamber of the Empire's capital world buzzed with the nervous energy of his advisors, but Morvek himself remained unmoved by Commander Voss's warnings. Extinct species do not make demands, he declared, his voice echoing off the crystalline walls. Whatever these constructs are, they are merely the desperate gasps of a dying civilization. We will crush them as we did before. 3 months had passed since the encounter in the Sol system. 3 months of increasingly urgent intelligence reports, of energy signatures spreading across human space, of mysterious transmissions that seemed to appear and disappear at will. The Empire's response had been swift and decisive. A strike force of 50 heavy cruisers had been dispatched to end the human threat once and for all. Commander Voss stood at the edge of the council chamber, his expression haunted. He had tried to warn them, tried to make them understand what they were truly facing. But the Empire's leaders saw only what they wanted to see, a technological curiosity that could be eliminated with sufficient firepower. The strike force will arrive at the Sol system within the hour. Admiral Threx reported, his confidence absolute. We have deployed quantum disruptors capable of destroying any construct, no matter how advanced. This human aberration will be ended. Morvek nodded approvingly. Broadcast the engagement across all networks. Let the galaxy witness the final end of the human plague. But as the holographic displays activated, showing the approach of the Imperial fleet, something unexpected happened. The human constructs didn't flee or attempt to hide. Instead, they simply waited, their geometric forms hanging in space like monuments to patience itself. The fleet opened fire simultaneously, their weapons creating a light show that could be seen from neighboring systems. Quantum disruptors, plasma cannons, and fusion warheads converged on the human installations. For a moment, it seemed as if the Empire's confidence was justified. Then, the weapons simply stopped working, not destroyed, not deflected, simply stopped. The energy beams dispersed harmlessly into space. The missiles detonated prematurely, their explosive force somehow contained and redirected. The quantum disruptors, weapons that could tear apart the fabric of reality itself, had no effect whatsoever. Arya's voice echoed across every communication channel in the Empire simultaneously. You have chosen consequences. What followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The human constructs didn't retaliate with weapons. They didn't need to. Instead, they began to transmit. The transmissions were unlike anything the Empire had encountered. They weren't communication in any conventional sense. They were something else entirely, pure information, but information that seemed to carry emotional weight, psychological pressure, and a kind of mental resonance that bypassed conscious thought entirely. The first ship to receive the full transmission was the flagship Dominator. Within minutes, its crew began reporting strange symptoms, hallucinations, overwhelming feelings of guilt and despair, a crushing sense of existential dread that seemed to seep into their very souls. Captain Sarah Chun materialized on the bridge of the Dominator, her form flickering between solid matter and pure energy. She was human, but like Arya, she had been transformed by 15 years of focused evolution. Her eyes held the accumulated wisdom of her entire species, and her presence seemed to fill the bridge with an almost tangible weight of judgment. "You destroyed our children," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. "You burned our worlds. You celebrated our extinction. Did you think there would be no accounting?" The Veilthran crew tried to respond, but found their voices caught in their throats. Chen's presence was overwhelming, not through any physical threat, but through the sheer force of accumulated human experience that she carried. Every moment of suffering, every loss, every act of courage and defiance from the war, all of it was channeled through her transformed consciousness. "We spent 15 years learning about you," Chen continued. "Your psychology, your fears, your weaknesses. We mapped the neural patterns of your species. We understood you better than you understand yourselves." The transmission intensified, and the crew began to experience something unprecedented in Veilthran history. Empathy, forced, overwhelming empathy for every human life they had taken, every world they had destroyed, every family they had torn apart. The psychological weight of their actions crashed down on them like a tidal wave, point one by one. The crew began to collapse, not from physical injury, but from the crushing realization of what they had done. Their minds, evolved for conquest and domination, simply couldn't process the magnitude of suffering they had caused. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared beside Chun, her form crackling with the energy of pure thought. "We call it the cascade effect," she explained, her voice carrying the clinical precision of a scientist discussing a fascinating experiment. "Your species lacks the neural structures necessary to process genuine remorse. When confronted with the full weight of your actions, your minds simply break." The effect spread from ship to ship, transmitted through the fleet's communication networks. Each vessel that received the signal experienced the same psychological collapse. Commanders who had ordered the deaths of millions found themselves paralyzed by guilt. Soldiers who had celebrated human extinction began to claw at their own minds, unable to bear the weight of their collective sins. Back on the capital world, Morvek watched in horror as his fleet simply stopped functioning. The ships remained intact, their weapons operational, but their crews were no longer capable of coherent action. They drifted in space, filled with beings who had been broken by the simple act of understanding what they had done. "This is impossible," Morvek whispered. "Psychological warfare doesn't work across species barriers. Our minds are too different." Commander Voss, standing behind him, felt the first tendrils of the transmission reaching even their homeworld. "We never understood them," he said, his voice filled with dawning horror. "We thought they were just another species to conquer. But they're not. They're something else entirely." The transmission reached the capital world, and suddenly every Veilthran citizen found themselves experiencing human memories. Not their own memories, but the memories of the humans they had killed. The children who had died in the bombardments, the families torn apart by conquest, the desperate last stands of a species facing extinction. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Veilthran Empire, built on the principle of might making right, couldn't survive the sudden introduction of genuine moral accountability. Their society, which had celebrated conquest and domination for millennia, crumbled as its citizens experienced the true cost of their actions. Arya's voice echoed across the galaxy one final time. "We are not your enemies. We are your teachers. Learn." The human constructs began to move, not as conquerors, but as shepherds. They took control of Imperial infrastructure, not to destroy it, but to transform it. The weapons of war were converted into tools of construction. The ships built for destruction became vessels of exploration and discovery. The Veilthran Empire ceased to exist, not through military conquest, but through the simple act of understanding. Those who survived the psychological transformation found themselves part of something larger, a galactic community guided by principles of empathy, cooperation, and mutual respect. Humanity had returned, but not as the species that had been driven to extinction. They had become something unprecedented, a civilization that had learned to weaponize compassion, to use understanding as a tool of transformation rather than destruction. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had proven that true victory didn't come from destroying one's enemies, but from helping them become something better. It was a lesson that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come, carried by the transformed descendants of those who had once thought themselves above such considerations. In the end, the Empire had been right about one thing. Humanity was indeed a threat to their way of life. But they had been wrong about everything else. The humans hadn't sought to destroy them. They had sought to save them from themselves. And in doing so, they had saved the galaxy from the darkness that conquest and domination inevitably bring.